Good Wednesday morning. Michael Clark here with BAM WX. We're launching our new Winter Weather Wednesdays. How fun does that sound? All right. We are going to start talking about the cold season and looking out ahead as far as possible, as often as possible here every Wednesday. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're going to talk about all things long range and winter in the coming weeks. And I'll tell you, for the first time in a while, we've actually started to see a progression into a cold Enso neutral and potentially seeing the development of some type of and more of an eastern-based La Nina, which can have big impacts on the winter outlook, especially to start winter. Plenty of risks for a colder start to the winter season. But before we get there, we have a lot to discuss in the short term. We'll take it right here to the featured image, which is low temperatures Sunday morning, September 8th, in the upper 30s from this particular weather model here across portions of Ohio where it has been very dry. And these nighttime low temperatures may have the potential to bottom out here, if you will, Sunday morning. But again, Winter Weather Wednesdays. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel to get the latest. Big cold front coming this weekend. I think these cold fronts continue to run pretty strong. And I believe that as we get into later into the month and into early October, some of these fronts can be pretty potent. They've been potent all year. I wouldn't take early frost out of the risk here at this point with how strong these fronts have been really the last several months. I think the dryness continues. The grain belt warms up after this cold shot for sure. Big warm shot coming next week. And that's going to really allow for an accelerated, quicker than normal harvest, we believe, at this point in time. Low temperatures Saturday morning, upper 30s Wisconsin, low 40s across East Iowa, Northern Illinois, Indiana, and the portions of Michigan. It will feel like early October across the region here this weekend, Saturday morning. Again, Sunday morning, upper 30s in Ohio, low 40s across much of the Ohio Valley. Again, just really, really chilly. High temperatures don't really much make it out of the upper 60s this weekend. The front moves to the east and the northeast, the mid-Atlantic. They're in the lower 40s here this weekend as well. It's just cold. I mean, where you see these 5-day departures, days 3 through 8. The coldest centered right over the Ohio Valley, the Great Lakes, running as cold as about 7 to 8 degrees below normal for second week of September will prove to be rather chilly. All right, you can see how warm it is back up into the Canadian prairies. Western Plains, northwestern U.S. The last 30 days, it's been dry, and this kind of factors into the thought process of harvest really beginning a lot sooner than normal. A lot of the primary U.S. growing regions here, for the most part, have just been really dry, with the exception here of the Dakotas, portions of Kansas, portions of Missouri, some little spots here. Regardless, overall, the last 30 days has been really dry with really lack of any activity. And it kind of continues. I mean, the next 7 days, there's just not really any systems to speak of. All right. Deep South stays wet with some post-tropical activity and stuff, but there's just nothing going on here. I mean, you've got a couple outside chances of a rogue shower or thunder shower here over the next week, but again, most people are staying dry here. The dryness continues into next week. All the ensembles, all the data hints at dry conditions persisting. There's really no reason to go against it right now. All along we've really thought September would be a really dry month with a risk of some kind of tropical disturbance bringing in moisture into the Ohio Valley that right now just does not look to be materializing. So the monthly outlook, if you will, is just really going into the way of the drier side here. There's no doubt about it. The 15-day departures using the ECMW FAI technology, again, with the exception of the Deep South and the Southeast, I mean, everyone is really, really dry. Not only are you really dry the next 15 days, but after the front this weekend, temperatures in this same region warm up significantly. And without precipitation and significantly warm temperatures this time of year, that's going to basically put an end to the corn crop. And it's going to start, you're going to see rapid changes in the U.S. corn crop over the next 2 weeks. It's going to start to turn and brown out and be done, really, for the most part, with this type of heat and dry conditions expected. This is week 2 temperatures from normal. The entire grain belt, and especially the heaviest areas in terms of where corn is at in the grain belt, runs really, really warm here next week. for sure, especially the western half of this. You cut that in half. The cooler risks and temperatures will stay to the south and southeast where the pattern remains active down there. But big warm signal coming. A lot of this is driven by a west-moving typhoon in the western Pacific Ocean. What that does to the jet stream is that kind of causes a ridge or an extension to blow up in the jet stream. It causes the jet to extend and pump mild Pacific air into the United States. And not only do we see that happening now, it happens again in a couple days. And this warmth probably is around for a good 2 weeks or so, at least for the time being. Can there be random fronts in there that offer up cooler shots? For sure, maybe. But overall, the theme is warm, especially when you look at the CFS weekly model. Not only is it warm, it's dry. The pattern continues in the dryness for weeks 3 and 4. To end the month, you can see it tries to get a little less excited with the dryness. I think late September into early October, especially further into October, the pattern can become active again. I see several waves in the North Pacific that would indicate potential fronts and disturbances into October. But in the meantime, this is really the general theme. I mean, this is really warm and it's dry, at least for the next 3 weeks. I mean, in terms of there's no major shakeups in the patterns. In fact, it's a pretty boring pattern the next several weeks with just warm and dry conditions. And that's kind of why we're thinking, accelerated harvest is likely. Dry conditions and warmth ahead leads to just a faster harvest, and areas with the greatest potential for that to happen is the entire grain belt. I mean, there's really no one that stands out more than the next guy, due to the just the overall broadness of the forecast. So, nothing to see there, right? It's just faster than normal, probably. We look ahead. All right, we want to talk about the cold season, winter, late fall and early winter. This is the change in the weekly sea surface temperatures over the last 4 weeks. We continue to see some dramatic warming in the North Pacific take place, all right? And we continue to see cooling really focused more across the eastern ENSO regions. That tells me a couple things. One, right now, hints are, this is September still, by the way, and these things can change, but hints are that this La Niña episode or this potential La Niña seems to be more of an east-based nature type. And the warm blob showing up here in the North Pacific that continues to strengthen really, really draws in my attention because there's certain winters in the analog set that have big negative EPOs or big North Pacific ridges. One obviously being 2013 and 14. So it's probably one of the leading analogs, is the leading analog from a standpoint of sea surface temperature patterns throughout the entire world. And the big driver in 13 was the EPO. In fact, in 13-14's winter, we didn't have high latitude blocking. We didn't have a negative Arctic oscillation or a negative NAO. In fact, those were positive pretty much all winter. We had a big North Pacific ridge. So that's an interesting feature there to watch going forward. If we can see something like that this winter, that would certainly be quite the different theme versus the last several winters. Looking at the subsurface temperature anomalies, another thing I'm noticing too is the nature of the coldest waters staying east really of 130 and seeing a little bit of a warmer setup here. Some models indicate that La Niña starts east-based and then retrogrades and becomes a central or western-based La Niña by the end of winter, which would signal a cold start to the winter but a warm finish. And I'm not in any disagreement with that personally. This is a look at the temperature anomaly, the subsurface temperature anomaly is kind of the evolution, the life of that. And again, it's really focusing on the eastern Pacific Ocean near the coast of South America there, which tells me that right now it seems to be more eastern-based suggestions here. And when you look at ENSO 1.2, the weekly ENSO 1.2 readings, that's the coldest reading out of the 4 regions right now. Technically, it's at a weak La Niña status. Given its reading, it has been really for quite some time. Years that match up best with this, that get into that weak to strong La Niña territory in ENSO 1.2, which is the far eastern regions, 01, 05, 17, and 21. Those are some recent years that line up well with the progression of ENSO 1.2. Even if we look at 3.4 to the weekly progression going forward, okay, you can see there's a strong clustering of years here that indicate we've got quite the sample size there in a weak, cool, neutral or weak La Nina, borderline there, especially as we got into winter. The years that go that route are years like 2017, 2005, 2021, 2013, 1992. You can kind of see this clustering of where we may go, and just a kind of an evolution look here is if we slide into this weaker Niña and it's more eastern based, we have an idea of what that might look like, right? Let's take a look here at this real quick. This is the top 5 analogs right now. What years are matching up closest right now, and they're all strongly indicating more of an eastern-based La Nina and that North Pacific warm blob, if you will. But this is the current setup, right? This is current, and you can kind of see what we're talking about here. Just the similarities really is what I'm after. Even in the Indian Ocean, there's similarities down here across east in the Atlantic, and even here across the AMO regions. It's interesting, I read an article years ago that talks about this cool, warm, cool setup in the Atlantic Ocean. That particular sea surface temperature pattern tends to favor more negative NAO risks into the winter. That's something that you may want to keep an eye on as well with that particular setup. Nonetheless, my focus is on particularly the east-based nature of ENSO and the North Pacific. Years that look like that. These are a few years that had weak eastern-based La Niñas. 95-96 winter was pretty intense. 96-97, 2000 and 2001 as well. And so was 17-18. It wasn't too terribly bad. Those years analog together look like this for a weak east-based La Nina. And I don't have a problem with this. The only part of this I start to worry about is the back half of winter. Late, let's say second half of January and into all of February. The area here has the potential to get warmer a lot quicker. It can still stay cold up here, but that would mean some sort of battleground setup, right? There's going to be some type of probably aggressive winter storm track in here somewhere. It may start further south and east for winter, but may be pushed back due to some ridging later into the season. At least that's the early thinking. CFS V2 seasonal, it's not too bad. I mean, that it kind of simulates this. This is obviously just a tad colder, but it's very similar in orientation. Precipitation, you can kind of see the analog pattern here, where it would suggest that we are the most stormy, and that would probably be right in through here, right about like that. And if you've got cold air there, you could get some snow. Note we've got lower departures here across the coastal regions. Maybe less snow there across the coastal regions this winter if you were to ask the analog package. The CFS seasonal for winter is very wet in the Ohio Valley in the deep south there. So, you get a strong Pacific jet in here with some colder air being dislodged south from a Pacific Ridge event, an EPO. And again, you could have more snow this winter than we've seen in the last 10 years for the most part. It's been rather snowlessness. Is that a word? I don't know. Anyways, we just haven't had a lot of snow the last decade, right? And I think this winter may prove to provide more than what we've had at least. When we look at those years, we made a fun map for the analog. These are the East Pacific La Nina snow anomalies. And a couple of interesting things here, but the main takeaway is, in general, most of the country here would see more snow than usual, especially than we've been used to in the last 10 years. Something to just keep in mind. This has a snowy northeast, coastal regions, snowy Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, very snowy northern plains as well. So if this particular setup can materialize, it wouldn't shock me to see something like that. Here's the wild card. If the Central Pacific goes to a weak Central Pacific base La Nina, where the La Nina isn't so much favoring the eastern part of the ENSO regions, it's more backing west in the central part, that's a warm risk for winter. Those are winters like 05, 08, 16, 22. Now, these winters still start colder. 05, December started very cold and snowy, but by January 2nd of 2005, it was 65 degrees in Indianapolis. So the switch can flip very quickly from winter to not being winter in years like this. So something to keep in mind going forward is we need to watch the overall nature of the ENSO regions and how it starts to evolve. Early suggestions are Eastern Pacific La Niña is possible, or an east-based La Niña, if you will. So that's all I have for today. Share it with a friend, tag a friend. We'll see you back here next Wednesday for our next Outlook. Take care.